mean, of course I do. I think everybody has a responsibility to do whatever it is that they can to, make the world a better place. We're talking specifically about these, Jim Crow 2.0 voter suppression laws in Georgia. Yeah, I think companies that have influence in Georgia, whether it's MLB or, local companies or whatever it may be, if you can flex your power in that way and use your influence of a platform that you have, where you have obviously black and brown players in your league, you have black and brown fans, and just generally the issue that we have with voter suppression in this country. I think everybody and every business and everything should be at the disposal to make sure that we're influencing those laws in the right way. And ultimately, it's all about people's rights, showing up, allowing people, to exercise their right to vote and to be a part of the civic process is the most important thing in a democracy. So this is extremely undemocratic and un-American by the ideals that we want to live by. And so, shout out to the MLB for making that step. I'm sure that was very difficult, and financially, I'm sure it has a lot of implications, and politically for them, I'm sure it does as well. But it draws a very clear line in the sand for a league who, has more to do than they have less to do. So it's a really strong step from them. I mean, it's amazing to see how far we've come, as a group, as athletes in this country, knowing that it started with the WNBA and having actually some of the police officers on duty that night in the stadium walk out and not, continue to do their job, to, having a little bit of a battle with the league over the shirts that they could wear. But being one of the first to take a stand and to make a really strong stand and bring it to the media's attention and bring it to everybody else's attention that this is something that they want to talk about, and they're not going to talk about anything else before that. Obviously, till now, where we have, the MLB taking an entire all-star game, out of a certain state. So, to see how empowered athletes are, I think is the most important thing, that not only we feel comfortable and feel safe enough in this environment and in our jobs, supported by whether it's leagues or federations, to say those things and to be very outward about them. But just how much more responsibility I think we've taken on ourselves. Athletes are in a unique position in this country that is obsessed with sports, that I think looks to us as a lot of, role modeling, not just for kids, but for adults as well, that sort of puts athletes on this pedestal all the time. And how so many athletes have sort of taken that responsibility on themselves, knowing the influence that we can have, I think is really inspiring. And I think it's made a huge difference in the country, to be honest. It changes hearts and minds. Athletes are, from every cross section of life, at every single intersectionality. So I think we have a unique power in our voice and a unique perspective, knowing that we can represent just about anyone in the country.
Yeah, I mean, Miss Megan Rapinoe pretty much said it all. But I do think, just empowering athletes across all leagues is, I think, what the biggest difference has been. Leaning on other leagues to do the right thing and to bounce ideas off each other and how we can create change, I think has been just incredible to see. Picking up a phone and calling a member of the WNBA and just bouncing ideas off of each other has just been incredible to just build that relationship and see that we're not so different, that we're all facing these challenges, and together being unified has actually been able to make the biggest impact. And it's been incredible to just be a part of it.
Not much to add to that. I mean, I think we've been given amazing platforms and being athletes. And I think about individual journeys through these last 5 years and people really coming into themselves and discovering that their voices carry a lot of weight and carry far distances, and then actually putting those voices into a collective effort and just the strength that has. And I'm really proud of this group because I think we've really come into our own with this and have grown, and we've had tough conversations, and we'll continue to have tough conversations, but we're in this together and we're wanting to make change, and that's the best way to do it.
obviously it's unacceptable. Not just the weight room, but we saw a difference in testing. We saw differences in the food. We saw differences in the marketing of it, obviously, with the withholding of the March Madness, logos and branding, all of that. So all of that stuff is important. I think what I always keep coming back to is we have no idea really what women's sports value is. We don't know the value of it. All I know is we've been able to be this successful with the lack of resources and the lack of funding and the lack of investment, all of the things that we talk about. So to me, that proves that there's at least some value worth exploring. And with the women's tournament, you saw the online impressions, whether that's Twitter, Instagram, like through the roof, TVs through the roof. You saw not only all of that, which those are important, but which people always argue, it's not that fun to watch. I mean, you got players, dropping 35 points and freshmen being on the All-American team, and it's just exciting to watch. I mean, they put on as good of a show as they possibly could, and certainly equal to the show that the men's tournament put on. So what I'm hoping more than anything is that anybody in power, that I guess Mark Emmert would be the one, is to actually think about the value that you're missing out on. Because now we're getting into business, and we've always said equality in general is a good business proposition. We know that it costs companies money when they are unequal or have bad practices or racist or sexist or homophobic or whatever it is. You're just leaving so much out there. So my hope is that, again, and when we talk about equality in women's sports, we always talk first about investment and funding and resources and marketing and branding and investing in not just the players, but the support staff and coaching and, media, TV media, print media, all of it. Those are the things that we talk about first. And I think anybody who, watches us or follows us, or really has skin in the game in equal pay or equality in that sense, knows that that's what we talk about first. And at the very end, we understand that if all of those things are done, then yes, we will most likely be requiring a much higher salary than we're at. So that's really what I have to say about Draymond Green. I think that it's really unfortunate in the position that he's in, having all of the resources that he has and the ability to have a much more educated opinion that he just hasn't. And then dragged all these other people in it by tagging them in it, obviously, and speaking about it at a time when, the tournament was going on, and all that we saw with the lack of investment, with the lack of resources, with the lack of funding. Like, that's just really frustrating that's the take that you have. You obviously you kind of showed your whole ass and not even talking, not even understanding what we all talk about all the time, whether it's WNBA players or us here on the national team. So that was frustrating. And also, like what Sue said, you tagged the wrong people. You don't think that we've asked for more funding? I mean, what are we screaming about nonstop if we're getting obnoxious to ourselves, to be honest? So it's just like you have, and then to obviously, 2 or 3 days later, completely double down on it. Mm-hmm. Just, it is really frustrating. I think we know this about all social movements and all people who are marginalized, whether it's by race or gender or, religion, sexuality, whatever it is not just their job to be the ones fighting oppression. We need all of the other people as well. So to have someone who does know what it's like to be oppressed in many ways, to heap that all back on female players or people who play female sports is just really disappointing. He has all the resources in the world. There's obviously a lot of amazing people that I know personally that work in the Warriors organization, who I'm sure are very happy to sit down with him. And any of us really would be happy to sit down with him. So hopefully that education process comes, because that was really disappointing. And from someone who has such a big platform, as we know, that's just not acceptable at all.
It's great that the NWSL players have unionized. I think unions have been great for female athletes and especially getting better working conditions and pay. So applaud them and applaud that they're starting that negotiation because it's going to be an epic one to really advance the NWSL. And as for the U.S. Women's National Team, I mean, there's a real intersectionality between the U.S. Women's National Team players that play in the NWSL. And so luckily, our PAs have been in constant communication and we're really in this together. You know, we're bouncing ideas off one another. Their executive board and our executive committee with the PAs are in constant contact. And so we're really working with one another to really make leaps and bounds because we have a long way to go when it comes to the professional standards of the league, as well as the fights that we're fighting here with the women's national team.